Welcome to Legal Tender.
Good morning, welcome to Legal Tender, and we're going to talk about something that I'm annoyed with. I know you're annoyed with because it's everywhere. We're going to talk about Brexit. Why should you care? What's going on? What impact is it having? I guarantee you, if you own stocks this week, you probably have a little bit less money.
It's going to be the Eurosceptics are out, right?
Oh, everyone's
That's
out.
the term, the Eurosceptics.
See, the thing about when something like this happens, it's such a big deal. Everybody has an opinion. All the
But
experts
we're going to
come
talk
in.
about why we care. Why does it matter, right? Why do you care?
Why do I care? Why would I care? But why is it important for everyone who's listening? Because everyone's impacted. I guarantee it.
It's amazing they passed a law they have to wear lobster coats. That's amazing, right?
What? What are you talking about?
No, I've been looking at all of the crazy stuff people are saying on the internet. And it's some stuff from saying they outlawed wiggly banana. You know, your banana's got to be straight, not too curved. It's part of the Euro issues. And then, you know, the vacuum cleaners, which we'll talk about. And then also that they got to have one of the reasons why they left, this is how uninformed these various blogs are, that they were passing a law that said all the soldiers needed to wear, all the Euro soldiers needed to wear back to the lobster red coats from the Civil War era.
That's a great
good
thing.
stuff.
But you mentioned bananas. So I just got back from Belize, which I'm really sad that I had to come back because it was great.
I'm
But
sad to see you. I had the best show last week without you being around. It was fantastic. We
You know
talked to
what?
somebody who knew something, right?
We haven't had a show that I enjoyed more than last week's show because I wasn't on it. But in Belize, they actually have these little tiny bananas called apple bananas.
Okay.
Which, if you've never been
That
to
should be outlawed.
Which, if you've ever been to Belize, they don't export anything, I don't think. So we're never going to have them there. They're amazing. They're the best bananas I've ever had. They make the bananas here taste like garbage. I mean,
Really?
they're so good. Yeah, they're little tiny things. They're about half the size
That's
of
probably
bananas.
why we don't have them here.
know.
They have a complete monopoly.
It's completely ridiculous. But anyway, we're going to talk about Brexit. Alex, what have you heard about Brexit? What does it mean? What did they do it?
So in preparation for the show, I have literally read hundreds of articles. I've listened to maybe 3 hours of BBC broadcast. I've listened to NPR. I have read every single article on ABC, NBC, Fox News. I have read all of the InfoWars websites. I have read and I don't know what in the world is going on. I mean, I know lots about this.
Well, that's because the people who wrote the articles didn't know either.
Yes.
Their boss came in and said, "Hey, Brexit's happening. Write an article. I need it in 10 minutes."
Yes. So despite the fact that I'm saying right up front that I don't really know what is going on, I mean, I have literally spent 12 hours researching what is going on, which says this is a very big problem. And what I can tell you is that I'm well informed with the experts who all say, we don't know. So therefore, I'm going to say, I don't know.
Which you've actually hit the nail on the head, because this is the big reason everyone woke up on Friday morning when the vote. No, first off, nobody thought that this was going to happen. So in the finance world, everyone positions their money based upon all these uncertainties. All the big hedge funds, people who traders, not investors, traders, they're completely different. People who trade, they'll position based upon short-term things that happen. Well, all the big brokerage houses are so big now, they do their own polling. They don't rely on Rasmussen or Fox News or Wall Street. They do their own polling.
So they call people
They
up?
all did their own polling.
Nice.
All of them, from what I've read, all of them said this was not going to happen. So they all positioned as if it were not going to happen. Well, guess what? It did. That's what we saw on Friday. They were all wrong, so they unwound all the positions they were doing and then went the opposite way. So instead of owning the pound, they sold it and then they shorted
by the
it.
yen.
So that's why the pound dropped by like 30%, is because this happened. And by the way, the drop in the pound on Friday, it was such a big move. It's only supposed to happen once every something like 14 million years. That's how big of a move it was.
14 million years?
Yeah, it was like a 16 sigma move or something ridiculous. That's how big it was. So that's what we saw, is this giant uncertainty, because nobody knows exactly how this is going to turn out. And when uncertainty is introduced in the stock market, they hate it. So that's why the market has sold off the past few days. It's up today.
And that's the reason why you're going to care about today's show.
Exactly right.
Because your money is invested in these markets, whether you like it or not. Right?
Whether you like it or not, the companies you own sell stuff over there, so they are going to be impacted. And what we're going to talk about is how much. How much should we care, and how big of an impact should it have?
And what should you do? And most importantly, who can you sue? Yeah, that's a great T-shirt.
Because I guarantee it's going to take a cruise ship full of lawyers to get this thing straightened out. I guarantee it.
Oh, thank God.
Thank God. Their kids got to go to college, for crying out loud.
No kidding. They need spinning rims.
So now that they have voted, they had the referendum, which here's the interesting fact about the referendum. The referendum actually is non-binding. The government doesn't have to follow the referendum. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, it's a non-binding. They're going to follow it, but they don't have to. Which in the United States, that's not the case. If the people vote via referendum, it happens. That's not the case over there.
Although we just sue and we overturn our referendums and our initiatives for violating more than one subject.
Yeah, when the referendum passes, you're never actually sure when it's going to take effect because it's going to be tied up in court for at least 10 years.
Right. In Washington State, we've had that issue come back over and over and over where we will have initiatives that get overturned by the Supreme Court for a variety of drafting problems, which begs the question, why would you draft, if you're going to create your own initiative or referendum, why would you draft it yourself without the aid of a constitutional lawyer? I don't understand that. They get overturned all the time. You spend, millions of dollars getting these initiatives passed in Washington State, and they get overturned.
Maybe you had a constitutional lawyer, but his interpretation of the Constitution was really crappy.
It was really,
I mean, it's terrible.
Maybe you should have had a good one.
Maybe you should have got a better lawyer. Paid him a higher retainer, huh?
There you go.
Bingo. So now what the UK is going to have to do is they have to file Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty with the European Union that formally says, we're out. So when that happens, then the EU and the UK are going to start to negotiate the separation.
This Article 50 part, this is the only part I can really contribute to something that I do know. So there was this treaty, the Treaty of Lisbon is coalesced two different prior treaties. And they generally say, this is how we're going to run, this is what we're going to do. And this Article 50 that you'll hear about in the news will talk about how is it that if you have a member state that wants to withdraw. And this is... There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 paragraphs about how you withdraw your entire country. 5 paragraphs, and the paragraphs have one sentence in them.
That's
no
awesome.
one ever thought that once they went to the party, they'd want to leave.
I guarantee if you'd have drafted that, it'd have been more than 5 sentences.
Right. Oh, yeah. No kidding. Well, I mean, it says like a member state, when they decide to withdraw, they shall notify the European Council of its intention. So, I listened to an entire show that went on for an hour and a half yesterday about what does the word notify mean? Does the notify mean in the press? Does it mean a speech from the floor? Does it mean you have to give some sort of formal stamp? Does it mean that you have to have all 4? I mean, what does the notify mean? Nobody knows. It was like we had a bunch of first-year lawyers draft this deal, or they said, we're going to draft this thing so poorly so that no one will ever be able to figure out what it means.
And so now once they file that, the negotiations start.
Assuming there's a filing involved. And not just a press release.
Maybe they're going to throw a paper airplane with a little thing that says, we're leaving, we're out, Merry Christmas. But so now they start negotiating. And from what I understand, a lot of the experts believe the negotiation process is going to take several years. This isn't going to be something that happens next week, which is probably why the reaction in the stock market and the bond market and the currency markets, probably a bit of overreaction because it's not like anything's happening right now. Nothing's happening now because the UK is going to still follow all of the EU treaties and trade agreements that are in place until they actually exit.
Okay.
So that's why nothing actually is going to happen immediately. And some think it'll take 4 to 5 years to get this straightened out.
How does that uncertainty affect my money?
So what'll happen is, here's the big problem. The UK is actually going to leave the EU. What is the UK, the United Kingdom, going to look like post-exit? Because it's not like this was a unanimous vote.
Right.
You know, it was what was it?
So the UK is England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland.
Yes.
And we've been hearing from Scotland and Northern Ireland that they're not happy and that they actually want to leave the UK.
They actually do. So
didn't we see a movie about this in the 80s? And it was this constant warfare. Great Al Pacino show.
Yeah.
Just lots of bombs involved.
Yeah. Amber actually brought up a really great point when this happened. She's like, this is really boring. What happened to the days when people had disagreements, so they just launched their warships and they went and fought it out and then conquered the other country? What happened to those days?
What happened to those days where you would just spill some blood instead of spilling ink?
Exactly right.
And actually that's a great point. I was talking with a guy who's a contractor in town here, Dave Friels. And Dave was saying, the problem is everybody's so sue happy. I said, listen, Dave, I agree with you. And the day that you want to pass the initiative that we bring back, gunfights in the street and that we actually hire your gunfighter and then you bring in your other gunfighters to settle disputes, I will sign that petition. However, until that day, you got lawyers, okay? You don't got bullets. We don't settle our disputes according to bullets, right? We settle them according to ink.
That would be so much more exciting. I was just talking to Secretary Lindsay this morning about there was a big police chase in Brewster.
Really?
And we're like, apparently some motorcycles, a couple motorcyclists, they were speeding and they went to get pulled over. Oh, they ran for it. They ran right through Brewster, up to Okanagan, over to Twist. How they finally got him over there. But I'm like, man, that's exciting. And we get excited about that around here. Nothing like that.
That is exciting.
Yeah, it was a good day. They got the police dogs out and ran them down. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an amazing world.
If you look at in the cities, and so when I was a lawyer in downtown Seattle, constantly the streets would be shut down. My office, I still have an office in the Columbia Tower, but on Fifth Avenue, we always have these protests that come by, and the bikers are the bicyclists are the worst because what they do is they'll get like 5,000 bicyclists, and they will stop all blocks of traffic, and they'll come up and they'll sit on the hood of your car, and if you just Google Seattle bicyclist protest car, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see that they have this just tremendous, and they're very aggressive in your face. Bikes. Well, the same thing is true about the motorcyclists who are outrunning police. And there's a recent one that happened in Florida where a guy comes by wheeling next to a cop, going, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" Yeah. And I'm like, "What is he gonna do?" Oh, well, he takes off at 200 miles an hour, and the cop's like, "Oh wow, bye." Try to catch him. That was the end.
Good luck. Yeah, never.
So apparently here, either our cars are faster, our cop cars are faster, or B, their bikes are slower.
Maybe it was some like little KTM like enduro thing. It didn't do like 100 miles an hour. Maybe it was one of those.
There you go.
But anyway, so the UK might look completely different after it exits from the EU. Scotland could leave. The UK or the Northern Ireland's actually talking about trying to figure out how they can join Southern Ireland to remain part of the EU because their big concern
that map will look so weird.
It will look really weird because if you think about it, if you live in Northern Ireland, you're used to going back and forth to the regular island. No problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not part of the EU anymore, the movement of people and goods and everything else, it's going to be much more difficult.
Well, here's a counterpoint to that. You just use a passport. Hello, here's my passport. Here's a checkpoint. Right? The checkpoints are there. You have the passport. You do the same deal.
Yeah, but would you be more annoyed if every time you had to go to Idaho,
Yes,
Oregon, or whatever, if you had to stop the
It's like going to Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You would be like, this is so dumb.
Yes. And when people like me who really pay attention to other people's problems but not their own, that's really the life of a lawyer is worrying about other people's problems so that you don't have to worry about your own. So Exhibit A, going into Canada, we had to go to this show. We were I was emceeing the Miss World Canada competition. And so I went there with my wife and our newly born baby that we didn't have because we had a home birth in our bathtub. We didn't have her social security card. We didn't have passport, nothing. So I had another lawyer from Winthrop write a letter to say that, hey, Alex, I know him and he's a lawyer and this is his kid. Well, he didn't realize what I was trying to do, so he just actually typed up an email and printed it out. So I go up and I try to come back into the States, and the Border Patrol guard says, "Are you kidding me? Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am a lawyer." He goes, and you're so stupid to come here and give me a piece of paper. I said,
well, at least I didn't scratch on the bark of a tree and give it to you. I could have done that.
And so we got detained for 2 hours as they are howling. The guys going, "Come here, look at this, look at this." And so they had like six of the guards were all inside. They're howling with laughter. I'm like, no, really. I am a real citizen, and this is my document. It's a printout of an email from somebody else who says they know me.
I can tell you exactly what I would have done if I were them. I just said, yes, please, we're going to detain you. And then I would have torn all the seats out of your car. I'd have taken the steering wheel off and be like, okay, you can go now. Here's the tools to put everything back in.
And that's a weird thing. They can do that.
They
can absolutely do that because the Constitution doesn't apply at those border areas there.
Yeah.
And so, that will be a problem if you have the UK that gets split up.
Mm-hmm. Here's the biggest concern. So let's assume that Scotland leaves. Let's assume Northern Ireland leaves. Now you just have basically England. And one of the great things about
Which is the financial powerhouse.
Right. And the reason it's become a financial powerhouse of the world is because all of these big financial institutions have set up shop in London as an easy gateway to Western and Eastern Europe to sell goods and services and move their people back and forth.
Right.
That's why they've set up shop there. Now the question becomes, if they're a different country, they're not part of the EU anymore, will they stay? Because lots of banks in the United States, I heard Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan say, I don't know if we can stay there because it doesn't make any sense for us when it was so much of our business happens in Germany, Sweden, Denmark, all these other countries, not just in the UK.
And it's so no matter what, they're going to have somebody who sets up a new center within the EU.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
like it or not, they're going to have a second headquarters.
They're going to have to probably move a lot of people.
Right? I mean,
and so the question becomes, well, what does England look like after this?
Well dressed. They look well dressed. If you've ever been to England, holy cow. I remember my wife and I were going to South Africa. We stopped in. We were like, oh, hey, let's go have some dessert. Mistake. We walk in, and the men are in these fantastic tailored suits. They were just the wait staff. And then the people were there. I was like, wow, that must be a $10,000 suit. Everyone, all these women, fantastic suits, all these crazy colors.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, that's why they laugh at us in America. Ah, okay.
But they had bad teeth, I bet.
You know, I didn't look close enough because I was just busy slurping my tea going, wow, I'm drinking tea. This tastes terrible.
Yeah. And when Amber and I were in Belize, we were at a lodge there, and everyone actually, at this lodge, a BlackRock lodge, everyone eats dinner together. They just assign you a number, and you go and sit. You have no idea who you're going to have dinner with.
Oh, really?
It was actually really fun. Well, one of the nights we had dinner with a newlywed couple from England.
Really?
Yeah, they were over there. And so we got in a conversation with them about Brexit.
The Brexit, yeah, okay.
They perfectly represented the country. They were completely split. He wanted to leave.
Wonderful husband and wife.
Yeah, he wanted to leave and she wanted to stay. And it was amazing. You know how the English talk.
Sure.
And they were so gracious in the way they were insulting each other about their viewpoints.
Fantastic.
I think he was an electrical engineer, and she worked at a university over there.
Okay.
Really well educated people, but they had just completely different viewpoints. So I wonder what their debates.
And
like
the reason for his wanting to leave was what?
He shared the opinion of a lot of people in England. We are really tired of being the country with all the money who's constantly subsidizing all these southern European countries, Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece. We're tired of writing checks to these people because they can't get their financial house in order. We're sick of it. We want to be out, and then let Germany subsidize them if they want to. We're done. And secondly, they're tired of all of the immigration policies. As you know, Europe has a terrible immigration policy of all the people being displaced from Northern Africa just flooding in there, and they're having to take in all these refugees.
And where they don't have the facilities to do it.
They don't have the
They
facilities.
don't have the infrastructure.
They don't have the
any way to
mechanism either.
process
They're
it.
just taking these people in with no idea what to do
Where do you
with
put
them.
them? Yeah, where do you put them?
And so he's tired of that. But her counterpoint was, look, this is a really good deal actually for the UK because it's a giant free trade agreement. Goods and services move back and forth so easily, and it's such a good mechanism that it actually benefits our economy greatly. That's what she said.
Well, and that's a point that actually that we in the valleys that we can appreciate the fact about these trade agreements. So regardless, we know that there's lots of people that hate these free trade agreements, but if you know anything about agriculture and you know anything about apples, cherries, pears, anything about that at all in the area, you know that without NAFTA, we would not be where we are today.
Yeah.
We would be 1/8 of the size. We would not have any of the fruit production. So anyone who knows anything at all about the local economy will know that we rely on those free trade agreements. And so as much as people may hate or love Bill Clinton, that rests on his plate in the mid-90s when the NAFTA actually came through. Lots of people hate it for lots of other different reasons. But for us here in Okanagan, Chelan Valleys, Wenatchee Valleys, without those agreements, ask any of these growers, what will happen to your fruit?
Yeah.
Grinding halt.
Yeah,
Become
nothing.
lawyers. The world will go to hell.
Can you imagine a world where all the apple growers, all the fruit growers around here, they actually had to negotiate a trade agreement with Oregon?
Yes.
Imagine that.
Yeah, right.
Wouldn't that be really weird? And you had to
Yes.
do it with every single state if you wanted to sell fruit there. You had to negotiate a trade agreement.
But here's the thing, though. As a counterbalance, again, one of the hundreds of articles that I read, I did realize that actually there is a state who is not a member state, right? It is Norway. Norway has the identical trade agreements as any other member does. And so people were saying, like, hey, these trade analysts were saying, like, look, the UK could get the exact same deal that it has now, but it just would be without any of the problems. So you have all the free trade without any of the obligations. But the counterpoint to that is they said, well, you're forgetting that who you're trading with. You're trading with Europeans who hold grudges. They measure the grudges in millennium, right? Not in months.
These are the same people who for millenniums thought every day how they could kill everyone else.
Yes,
that's
right.
what they did.
You know, in Latin, for example, I was studying Latin, right? So that's the early Europeans here.
Yeah.
There were, think of how many words that you know for the word kill. You know, kill, you have maim, you have decapitate, and then, you know, you start thinking, well, impaled, and then you run out of words like,
Keel
like 10.
haul 'em.
Like 10. No, there's 150 different words in Latin for the ways to kill somebody, right? Killing when you're running and a spear gets shoved through your head. Killing when a charioteer comes by with the little whirly spikes, you know, and disembowels
What, the
you.
whirly spikes?
Yeah,
What are you talking
killing
about?
after being boiled and then burned, or burned and then boiled. Right? So all those different words. That is the community that you're talking about, right? So very different versus us here. We love to forgive people. We're like, oh, you stole from us last month. Thank you for turning the leaf. Come back in the fold. Here's some more money, right? Welcome to politicians.
Yeah, I actually heard an interview on I think it was Friday. No, it was Monday. I heard an interview with Alan Greenspan. He's a great historian in addition to a great financial person, but he was talking about the days of the initial formation of the EU. And he said, I wondered at the time whether or not it would ultimately be successful, because the real issue that you have there is the melding of all of these different cultures. Because the false premise they operated on when they created the European Union is they thought all of these southern countries would then start acting like Germans once they became part of the EU. From day one, it never happened, and it never will happen. Italians are Italians, and they always will be. And so that's been the big disagreement, and that's one of the things the UK is so upset about, is because all of these bad actors are being subsidized by all the people who've had their house in order. But not everyone agrees about having the UK house in order. I'm going to play a video clip, and this is by a gentleman by the name of Daniel Hannan. And he's one of the, I don't know what you call them, MPs from the European Council. Okay. And he is giving a speech to the Prime Minister of England, and it is breathtaking. You're going to want to salute after he's done.
Okay.
Prime Minister, I see you've already mastered the essential craft of the European politician, namely the ability to say one thing in this chamber and a very different thing to your home electorate. You've spoken here about free trade and amen to that. Who would have guessed, listening to you just now, that you were the author of the phrase British jobs for British workers, and that you have subsidised, where you have not nationalised outright, swathes of our economy, including the car industry and many of the banks? Perhaps you would have more moral authority in this House if your actions matched your words. Perhaps you would have more legitimacy in the councils of the world if the United Kingdom were not going into this recession in the worst condition of any G20 country. The truth, Prime Minister, is that you have run out of our money. The country as a whole is now in negative equity. Every British child is born owing around £20,000. Servicing the interest on that debt is going to cost more than educating the child. Now, once again today you try to spread the blame around. You spoke about an international recession, international crisis. Well, it is true that we are all sailing together into the squalls, but not every vessel in the convoy is in the same dilapidated condition. Other ships used the good years to caulk their hulls and clear their rigging, in other words, to pay off debt. But you used the good years to raise borrowing yet further. As a consequence, under your captaincy, our hull is pressed deep into the waterline under the accumulated weight of your debt. We are now running a deficit that touches 10% of GDP, an almost unbelievable figure. More than Pakistan, more than Hungary, countries where the IMF has already been called in. Now, it's not that you're not apologising. Like everyone else, I've long accepted that you're pathologically incapable of accepting responsibility for these things. It's that you're carrying on, wilfully worsening our situation, wantonly spending what little we have left. Last year, in the last 12 months, 100,000 private sector jobs have been lost, and yet you created 30,000 public sector jobs. Prime Minister, you cannot carry on forever squeezing the productive bit of the economy in order to fund an unprecedented engorgement of the unproductive bit. You cannot spend your way out of recession or borrow your way out of debt. And when you repeat in that wooden and perfunctory way that our situation is better than others, that we are well placed to weather the storm, I have to tell you, you sound like a Brezhnev-era apparatchik giving the party line. You know, and we know, and you know that we know that it's nonsense. Everyone knows that Britain is worse off than any other country as we go into these hard times. The IMF has said so. The European Commission has said so. The markets have said so, which is why our currency has devalued by 30%, and soon the voters too will get their chance to say so. They can see what the markets have already seen, that you are the devalued Prime Minister of a devalued government.
Oh, snap. Wow.
The world would be a better place if all politicians spoke like that.
Yeah,
I
no
mean,
kidding.
that
I
is
wrote
just
down
a
a wooden
roundhouse
and
punch of truth.
Right. I mean, well, first of all, with the eloquence, people say that if you continue and persist in your wooden and perfunctory way. I wrote that down. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to put that in the Bible right there in the lawyer Bible of insults.
Yeah, you should actually have that on your business card. Just put that on there.
Right. Well, you take lines from Shakespeare, the appertaining rage with which you fill the blank.
So Daniel Hannan gave that speech in 2009 in front of the European Council to Gordon Brown, the then Prime Minister. He said that their currency had depreciated by 30%. Oh, it's down like another 30% since then. So they've depreciated a ton. I mean, I think back then the pound to the dollar was like 2.1.
Okay.
It's 1.3 this morning.
Oh.
So it's down a substantial amount. Daniel
Time
Hannan,
to go eat some nice sweets.
that's actually one of my recommendations at the end. We'll get to that.
Okay.
But Daniel Hannan was one of the people who said, you know what? I'm sick of this. Everyone needs to vote to leave the EU. What's funny about that is if they voted to leave the EU, Daniel Hannan was going to lose his job because there's no reason to be part of the European Council anymore. He was going to lose his job. So he said, please fire me. Please, let's vote to leave and please fire me.
Wow, nice.
When's the last time you heard a politician say that?
Ron Paul.
Ever.
Interesting. Okay, all right, I like it. So tell me, why do people care about this with our money? Here we are in the States, and people are saying, okay, well, how should I guard my portfolio? What should I spend as far as should I become a broker saying sell, run for the hills, give me gold?
I'm going to take a different position than almost everyone that I've read about. You shouldn't care very much.
Okay.
Here's why. What percentage of profits that the S&P 500 generates are derived from the United Kingdom? What percentage?
No idea.
3%.
Oh.
3%. So let's just assume the United Kingdom just goes away and those 3% of profits just boom, evaporate, which will never happen. But let's just assume they did. What should the market adjust to if those 3% goes away? How much should the market go down?
3%.
3% probably.
Yep.
Yeah, we were down almost 4 on the day one.
Oh, okay.
And so we were down we sold off almost 6% after this happened. So my point is, it doesn't matter as much as everyone wants to believe. This is not going to be, in the realm of all of Americans, this is not going to be a big deal. In the realm of the stock market long term, this will not be a big deal. The reason it won't be a big deal is because it's in everyone's best interest to negotiate trade agreements so the EU benefits and the UK benefits. And at the end of the day, regardless of what happens and all of the crazy fear-mongering you're going to hear from politicians and market analysts on CNBC, this will not be a big deal. I mean, does anyone remember when Greece defaulted on their debt and they're a member of the EU?
Yeah.
I mean, how many times? It happened a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't that big of a deal.
Didn't affect us.
Didn't affect us because Greece doesn't really matter that much.
Unless the broker you're dealing with or the investor you're dealing with is dealing heavily in European stocks. So how can you tell, like as a consumer, how can you tell like where are my money? Is my money in a place that I could be at risk?
Yeah, if you own mutual funds, it's actually really difficult because you have to go in and look at what your mutual fund owns to see where your exposure is.
Okay, so suppose if someone's sitting there and saying like, gosh, I don't know what I have. I don't know what I should do. What should they do to figure out if they own mutual funds that actually are invested in these stocks that will be impacted by this?
You need to call whoever your advisor is, you need to call and ask questions. What do I own? If you don't know what you own, you better figure it out. What's your exposure to Europe? What percentage of your money is invested in countries that are companies that are domiciled in Europe? What percentage is that? And here's the thing. Here's the thing that always is very interesting about the stock market. The stock market is the only market in the entire world where when everything goes on sale, people run for the exits. Think about that.
Yeah.
It's the only one. When things get cheap, people get scared to death.
And they want to take all their money out.
Imagine if everyone treated the stock market like Black Friday. And everyone wanted to stampede.
They wanted to buy because it's so cheap.
Imagine if people wanted to stampede in the doors of gun capital when the market sold off by 10%. Imagine what would happen. I mean, but obviously that's a little bit ridiculous. But when things go on sale, people get scared. No, you shouldn't get scared when things go on sale. It's actually less risky to invest then. You should be putting more money.
Actually, so what you shouldn't do, I mean, I'll do the interpretation here. What you shouldn't do is call your investment advisor. You should call Cody.
Exactly right.
They should call you.
Yes, they should.
And the point is that you're just saying, look, just relax, but make sure also that you're not invested in something that you don't know what it is. I mean, we've talked about this in the show a lot about how people don't know what they're invested in and how do they come up with that number and why are we trading and why are we buying, why are we selling? And you're saying this is a good time to buy, but how much do you own? How much do you purchase of European stocks? I mean, how much involved are you?
So I would say that of the portfolios that I manage, I would say the companies that have direct domiciled in the European Union are probably less than 10%.
Okay.
Most of the companies are the United States companies. Most of them, a few of them are in other countries, but most of them are in the United States. So the actual exposure directly is fairly small. But still, the companies that I own, they get half the revenues from countries outside the United States. So they still have a lot of exposure to sales.
I see. So they're getting revenues from outside the States. They're a U.S.-based company.
Right.
Okay.
But they sell a lot of stuff to Europe. They sell a lot of stuff to the U.K. And so there is still exposure. But my point is, at the end of the day, this is not going to be as big a deal as ABC News and NBC News wants you to think that it is. This still is not that big of a deal.
And it is amazing how little these commentators know what is going to happen. I mean, because this is
breathtaking, yeah.
It's quasi unprecedented in a way because the concern is, well, what about Texas, right? So people have been talking about, Texas wants to leave. The difference is it's not going to happen ever. That will never ever happen.
No.
We don't have a mechanism in our Constitution for a Texit. We don't. It's not going to happen. It's not apples and oranges. It's spacemen and Paterites from Pateros. It's not going to happen, right? And the reason is, again, the EC, when they put this whole deal together back in 1973, when they first put this community together, before any of these treaties came in place, they said, we recognize people may not like this, so we want an out. This was a prenuptial for countries, and we can really respect that.
Well, you can love that as a lawyer.
Right.
You can love that.
You can. You realize, a contract is made to be breached.
Yeah. Here's what I think was a really interesting point about this whole thing. If the UK economy or the European economy were growing at 3 to 4% a year, the GDP was going at 3 to 4% a year, this would never have happened. This would never happen because it would have never occurred to anyone to actually exit.
Right.
The exact
going
same.
great.
Everything's going
right.
great. The exact same thing is true. If the United States were going at 3 to 4%, Donald Trump would not be the Republican nominee for president.
That's absolutely true. That's that, and that is the point actually that you look at some of the U.S. commentators saying that this is an environment. The rejection of the borderless EC states, the EU, this whole immigration concern, the trade concerns, the deficit concerns. This is what's created the environment where you have somebody who is a Donald Trump who can come in and say, look, this is a problem we want to address. And other people saying, no, that's not a problem. That's a benefit. And you can see people, even with their own families, are split. Is it a pro? Is it a con?
Yeah. So people are becoming, when they do polls, they say, well, when you go to the polls and vote, what is the most important issue they're concerned about? The economy is consistently number one in everybody's mind. And because they're dissatisfied with the growth of their personal income, their jobs, the economy, now they're looking to some really unorthodox ways in order to change that.
Yes.
And so the UK is going that way. The United States is going that way. At least the Republican Party is going that way.
And this is and universally and categorically, this is a rejection. I mean, the fact that you have an outsider, a Donald Trump outsider, who is now a Republican insider, purportedly, that is a rejection, an implicit rejection of the way things have been business as usual. There's There's no way in the world a Bernie Sanders could have been a Bernie Sanders today, how he was today. There's no way you'd have a communist or a socialist who would come anywhere near the top, 50 of the lower half.
Not a chance, but that guy was within a blink of an eye of being the nominee.
And and so people should wake up and say, what is changing about what's going on around us? Why is it that people are upset? And how does this affect my business? So as a lawyer, how does it affect my business? Well, if I have a criminal case, I need to make sure that any immigration consequences are discussed. If I have a business formation or business dispute, I want to make sure that all my guys have papers, right? Who are here legally, and or they can't have some crazy ex-wife or some current wife say, oh, well, I'm going to use his immigration or her immigration status against them. And so those are things that you would never have thought about. And in fact, the judges, they're so radioactive about this. They're making sure that in every case, every single civil lawsuit, you're going to sue over breach of contract, over because some guy graded your road wrong. You better make sure that you affidavit and say this person is a U.S. or is not a U.S. national. So that way you're not affecting somebody's rights. Because if somebody comes in to my clients and says, hey, this guy's an illegal, we're going to bring it to the judge, I'll say, look, there's a bar association opinion on that says you're violating their human rights. Like it or not like it, the law has changed. And so what's happening in the European community, we're saying, how is that happening here? What is happening? And what do we want to do about it?
Yeah, and if you happen to get a client from Belize, let me know, because we should probably fly down there and meet their family and talk to them, just to make sure that you're safe and I'm safe and everyone's safe.
Bananas all around.
Everyone, we can have some apple bananas. They're amazing.
That's right. Well, this is Legal Tender.
See ya.